Angry, we're not here to talk about sales in EVE-Online. We're talking about the monthly economic report. So I'm sure you've prepared graphs, knowing you, but I'm gonna pull up
I
the.
actually don't, because there's not much special this MER around that CSP didn't already. You can't already see through their
Yeah,
normal MER stuff, so
cool.
I didn't bother to make anything. There is
All right.
one which we talked about before, which is that the only thing that's sort of new in this time is that so the last MER they didn't have the Pochman commodity. So for people who are familiar with Pochman, they changed it so that a part of the payout is now in a commodity you loot from the wreck of the observer of the thing that I forgot the exact name of the thing. Yeah, it is just the observatory, and you loot it from the end, and then you sell like blue loot. In
Mm-hmm.
the last MER, they didn't classify it separately, so it was just folded under normal
Commodities.
Triglaven survey data you get from uh, abyssals.
Mm-hmm.
So you couldn't see which part of the commodity loot was abyssals and which part was Pochman. In the January one, they did split that apart, but because of the way they coded the top 6 commodities over time, it'll take multiple years, I think. Not this one, the
One
sinks and
before.
faucets. No,
Oh,
the
you meant this
commodity
one? Yeah,
faucets graph is the one that
this
would
one.
have it. But because yeah, this one I think would. Let me check if this does have it.
It's possibly only in the data
Oh,
that they have
Edencom
to.
loot or Edencom data. You can't see with the thing this small.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it would be under the commodity bucket, but if you go to the graph a bit below that, called commodity faucets, top 6 commodity faucets over time.
So here
So
it's
the
still
issue with this,
it's still in it,
it's
right?
not
At the
here yet because it's
yeah.
only 1 month of it. It would have to override. I'm guessing with the way that CCP coded this, it would have to overcome like 3 years of other commodity faucets in order to appear. But the number this time is 5 trillion. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a little, but it's not, but that plus the current Pochman number is like 12 trillion total faucet, which is a lot lower than the 22 it used to be.
Yeah, and we see that in the total ISK faucet graph as well that we're going to look at later. So, um, yeah, so they split it out in the data, but not in the graphs yet. Um, if we start at the beginning, Angry, there's something that is new this time. I don't know if they did it last time, but they do. I think last time they might have started this to do a quick economic summary ahead of it, and there were one or two little mistakes in there that I let them know about. But overall, it's good that they're doing a write up. I think a lot of people aren't going to look at the graphs and are looking for either other community members to interpret them like we're doing right now, or for there to be some guidance with bullet points. What they're saying here though is I guess not as straightforward as you would think. So, for example, here they're talking about that the mining value saw a significant increase in January with an average rise of 24.8 compared to December. And while if you were looking at this production versus destruction versus mining graph, you would think, oh, okay, yeah, here's the big uptick in mining. We do have to look at that in terms of the average market price though. So this is a using a 30-day moving average market price for these minerals in the asteroids. And since we have a sharply rising MPI, I think you even posted this on Reddit, Angry, but we really do need an inflation adjusted mining graph so we can see what exactly is being mined. If we look at the ore that is being mined here, they are showing us you can see that there was more ore mined in January than there was ore mined in December, which is partly also because people stopped, ice mining so much because of the Winter Nexus event. But also, these are less dense ores than they used to be, right? So Equinox introduced a new ore type, so it's not comparing apples to apples if you compare it to pre-Equinox
Right.
times.
And there's actually something to talk about that later on, once we get to that part. So this we did talk about. The other one, actually, you can sort of even tell through their short blurbs. So if you can see, go to their blurbs, they tell you that mining's up whatever 20%, but the MPI is up 7.7%.
Yeah.
So like,
Mostly the MPI mostly up because of pyrite and morphite. We can look at the details in a second.
I
Yeah,
would say Mexilon and Morphite more than the other two, but there's some pretty interesting stuff if you think about a couple of the so why this happened.
yeah. It's Metanox moondrills, right? I mean, if we're looking at pyrite and Maxilon specifically, and
Yeah.
I'd love to get your take on this, Angry.
So
But
the take on Pyre is actually a bit different in that do you know the Celestis website with the ore refines?
yeah, yeah, I can pull that up.
Celestis.ore.de.
Yeah, there you go.
So the interesting thing about this one is that if you look at these ores, and this is my pet theory about why Pyrite is up, is that if you look at the if you scroll a bit to the right, you'll see like the website tell you where you expect to find the ores.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
it'll say like Sovno or whatever, or like no, might
yeah.
be a thing at the bottom that you have to check.
No, it
There it
is
is.
on the right. I just the window's just a little bit cut. I can if you can continue talking. I'll pull it up.
Sure. So so the big so for example, the difference is if you look at the new ores versus the old ores. So the old solve ore used to be the most popular solve ore used to be Bistot, which
Hmm.
supplies mainly let me find Bistot. So Bistot supplies pyrite, Mexilon, and Zydrine. And the ore that replaced Bistot, if you look at the new solve hubs, is Hezarmine it's still supposed to primarily supply Zydrine, but instead of pyrite and Mexilon, it supplies tritanium and isogen.
Hmm.
So all these null miners who are going out and mining the most commonly available ore available to them, they used to produce pyrite and Mexilon as byproducts. Now they don't anymore. And now if you're mining the most common solve ore, it's Hezarmine, which just gives titanium and isogen. And this is common across all of them. Like if you look at the second most common solve ore, which is supposed to be Weganite for Megasite, that one also, I believe, doesn't give um, pyrite and Mexilon. So let me try to find
But you
scroll
also
down.
have, I mean, on top of that,
Yeah, so
you have
Weganite
R4.
is only it's only Megasite and Tritanium. So CCP have removed from nullsec asteroids the most common Mexilon and Pyrite ores, and the replacement is not as good. And the thing about Pyrite and Mexilon is there's not like there's not dedicated ore that's very good for making either of them. The only one if you sort on Celestis by pyrite, the dedicated ore is supposed to be Mordunium and then Scordite, but if you look at the IS per hour, they're awful. Like Mordunium and Scordite is you can mine for a whole hour and make like with Rorqual boosts and make like 25 million ISK. They're completely trash. People used to get these null just by mining Bistot.
And so, I mean, and two additional things on that, Angry. One is, I mean, the reason they replaced it with isogen is because isogen was the bottleneck before. So or at least that's part of it, right? They were trying to
Right.
loosen the isogen bottleneck, which they have done, or they shifted the problem. The other thing though on pyrite and Mexilon is also you're metanoxing R4 moons heavily, and therefore you don't have the byproduct of active moon mining, which was also pyrite and Mexilon. So that makes the problem overall even worse.
Well, if you look at the moon mining, right? People right now are mining moons for pyrite. If you look at the if you switched over to
Yeah, I'm pulling up the MER again.
the moon ore tab, you'll see that yeah, zeolites and bitumens are better than all the R8s, and they're also better than vanadinite. And zeolites is only a little bit worse than R16 because of the pyrite inside the moons.
This is the if you're looking at R4 moons though, if you have 50% of the R4 moons metanox, then certainly that's going to have a massive impact.
I don't think
Right?
that's what that graph says. That graph is saying of the R4 on the market, 50% came out of a metanox, but not 50% of R4 moons are being metanoxed.
No, right. Out of the ore that was generated, 50% came from metanox. That's how I read it. Read the
Right,
graph, right?
right. But that doesn't mean that 50% of R4 moons are being metanoxed. And if you see the
No,
ratio, you actually get a lot more R4 that's being mined by Athenors because people are mining them for the pyrite, whereas
I
you
think
don't
they've
get
switched
pyrite
to
out of
that.
R8.
I think they've switched to that recently because of the price development. But we I think we had kind of a wave where after introduction, sweeping Metanox um, adoption across null, and now you might have on the R4 side, you're moving back a little bit more to Athenors because of the Mexilon and Pyrite pricing. Would you agree?
Well, we can see the history there, right? So it seems like as a proportion, R4 from Metnox has peaked in about October and then started dipping a little. And you also see the orange part start regrowing as people drop more Athenors to get at the pyrite.
Yeah. Let's talk about ISK sinks and ISK faucets, right? Because we see something we don't often see in Eve, which is a drop in money supply, and that's mostly because of the active ISK delta, right? And I'm going to switch over to our little Power BI over here to look at the faucet and sink developments over time. I know you mentioned this as well in your Reddit write up, Angry. You suspect this is people going inactive, right? It could also be bot bans. That's always the age old discussion on
Right.
active is delta. We've had that discussion many times on the stream as well. But if you, I've pulled up the graph here in the background, and what you can see here is the active is delta being relatively high, between 60 and 80 trillion in the last 3 months. You can see it was positive in October, and that's clearly Goon's move up. Right, people inactive accounts becoming inactive, so increasing the available money supply. And since then, we have had a steady drop. And interestingly, we know that ISK becomes inactive by definition after 3 months. So the big drop you would expect for next month in February, where a lot of the goons that logged on, and you will know more about this because they're your colleagues, but logging on in October, maybe moving and possibly immediately unsubbing, would be a common thing that I would be expecting, right?
I think so too. I think uh because you can sort of see the so we have the little bump in June from Equinox, right?
Correct.
And then the interesting thing is normally you'd expect the winter expansion also to have a little bump, but the winter expansion came out. Revenant came out in November,
Yeah, fell
but there
flat.
was no November bump like you saw last year with Havoc.
Yeah. Yeah, it completely
So
fell. I
instead,
mean,
for November, you also still have activist delta going negative.
yeah, correct. And I think a big chunk on that is also because a lot of people already resubbed again in October. So you don't have that typical, oh, let's check out what's going on when the largest alliance in the game is moving and has mobilized all of their members and they're already resubbed again. So I think that's going to have to be a big part of that. And I'm a bit scared for February. Although I don't really want to dismiss the whole bot ban argument, because um we have seen a lot of posts on Reddit. We know there's a lot of activity going on, and I think uh, looking at the past history and what happened in past July, which I think we can very squarely attribute to bot bans. I think that it's probably about half and half. It's people going inactive, but it's also bots being banned because it continues to be an issue. If we're looking at the faucets, um, as you said, they're down a little bit in January, although December is also almost is always very special because of winter nexus, right? You have those overseer personal effects flooding the market. They're being bought back and inject a massive amount of ISK into the game, so that's fairly natural. Um, and then a little bit of a Pochvan impact as well. Angry.
Yeah, but I think actually the biggest change from October is that you actually so in October we had this extremely high bounty bump up to like
Yeah,
try to pull up the October numbers for
yeah, I can show you here. We
sorry, I mean
have
December numbers.
we have this right here. This bump, you mean, right?
Yeah, that. So people were like, "Oh, CCB overbuffed the null sec anomalies when they did the thing, and when they rolled out the Equinox site revamp." And as it turns out, that bump was kind of short lived. And when you add that, and right now in January, the ratting numbers for null are pretty similar to what they were pre Equinox. And
And why
actually,
is
one of
that,
the big
Angry?
reasons, and I think, well, one of the lesser documented things is that it seems that starting from like mid October, the DPS broke. So no matter how much you rat in the system, the DPS would not go down.
Okay.
That got fixed uh, in basically early January. So once that happened, a large parts of null that had a big multiplier on their ratting bounties stopped getting it, and that caused the bounty price to drop back down fairly quickly once that bug was fixed.
Okay. And then we still have a little bonus on though, right? Like in terms of like the bounce, it went uh bonus on bounties, and then did it go back halfway, or where are we at right now? I forget.
I think it's pretty much uh what do you mean?
Because we had
It's
what, a 25% payout bonus, was it, that we got?
no, it wasn't coded that way. It was just that the DBS was got frozen at whatever it was in
No, I
November.
don't mean,
And
the bug. I meant the buff. CCP gave like a flat
oh, the yeah, it was a 30% to
30%.
battleships within nullsec anomalies. That was not reverted, but they've reverted it. You'd see bounties drop below Equinox numbers, I think.
Right. Okay. They could also fix mining, and then we would have bounty faucets go down a little bit, because people would maybe actually possibly go back to mining in large scale. Let's go back to sinks and faucets. So okay, so faucets, we're still very, very high, right? So if you're talking historically, we are almost double of what we were just 2-3 years ago in terms of ISK faucets. So clearly, a lot of ISK is being injected into the game in the form of bounties, in the form of, if we go, let's go back here to here. You can see if you're
I
wanting to
can't
know.
see
Oh,
the stream zone ad break.
no, no worries. You got a sub, dude. I'm kidding. There we go. Okay. Commodities, as we said, that that includes blue loot. It includes red loot. Right. Bounty prices from ratting. ESS main bank auto payment already at 27 trillion. And then we have incursion payouts 16 trillion. Those are the big faucets. And if you want to inject a lot of ISK into the game, you've got to have it sync out somehow. So if we look at the sinks, you can see that they too have grown. So that's generally a good thing. But there is one big issue here that I still bring up every month. And I think you agree with me, Angry, but I don't remember. But the tax break we got on sales tax, which is the biggest sink in the game, they basically halved sales tax in July, which
Yeah, they never reverted it.
they never reverted it. I was speculating, within NDA here, before that change happened, I would have expected the reason you make a change like that is because you want to stimulate the economy. You want to see if you can increase increase ISK velocity. The other reason you could you would want to do that is to just balance out ISK sinks and faucets overall with industry and market. They never explained it publicly why they wanted to do it, and I always thought, hey, this is an experiment for 2 or 3 months, but they never went back and fixed it. So now we are in January, and I think it would be the easiest way to get to add another sink into the game or to add it back into the game, because the tax cut isn't even something that people were asking for in July. It just came completely out of the blue. Do you agree, Angry, on, like, do you also think they
Yeah,
should put it back?
I have no idea why they did that. Like, if it was for a few months to see the data, then sure. But like if you count all the months that this has happened, right? So it's close to something like 100 trillion in that this has not sunk and added to the money supply, which is not a not a small number. Like if you look at the money supply graph, it's like 5% of the money supply that's been added to the uh to the money supply
Absolutely.
just by this one change.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the if you just look at here, the MER says transaction tax, it calls it transaction tax. You can see that it's the largest ISK sink in the game, and it has been for a long time. And together with broker fees, which is the other market related tax, is just a massive tool for them to regulate money supply. And so I hope that we'll see it go back up, especially because some of you that haven't been playing for so long might not know this, but it used to be that the transaction tax was lower and the broker fee was higher. So it used to be much more penalizing to change your orders and put up orders. They've reverted that, which I think is a good change, because changing your orders is more dynamic market play. It's more it's more forgiving overall, to trade items, etc., etc. Transaction tax is actually only paid when something is sold. So typically, I would argue that it hurts the player base less when you pay tax on something where you actually received money. And so, I just hope that they put it back. It's something that the player base didn't ask for, and I think it would help keep money supply in check. If we look at the money supply graph, which you refer to right now, that's this one right here. I mean, you can clearly see that ever since, I don't know, in 2022, the money supply started growing a lot quicker, and that's even though we don't have a larger player base. I think that's one big thing to consider, right? Maybe
Well,
slightly higher
I would say we have more players now than we do in 2022. I think by I
at
think
the lowest side. Yeah,
but it's not that much bigger.
yeah. And so I think priority for CCP should be, getting some of the faucets in check, which they've done a fairly good job on that end. So wormholes, I think, were reined in from their crazy times. Now they're working on Pochven, with they've they've successfully managed to not inject ISK into nullsec angry. That's that's counteracting this. Maybe you would wish a little bit of a shift there, but overall, I think it should be a top priority for CCP to ensure that that the ISK supply doesn't keep rising as it is now. And I think just looking at Pochven and just looking at the sales tax issue, I think you could easily balance this to level it out over the next few months. And a little bit of increase never hurts in any economy or ever game, but you really want to keep this money supply in check.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of strange um because it seems like he's fairly inconsistent with how they want to with how they're doing this, because a while ago, if you remember, a lot of it they raised industry taxes by a lot, and that made a lot of industrials very angry, and it's like, well, why are they doing this? To keep, well, yes, to keep the iskin faucets, to keep sinks and faucets in balance. But then, like, a year and a half later, we have this, it seems that they're not interested in that as much anymore, because you have this unbalancing of the sales tax, and then you also have uh, it. I wouldn't say it's actually actually, yeah, inconsistent would be the right word, because they also uh within the past couple of quarters, not months, nerfed wormholes by quite a bit, and nerfed Hodgkin by quite a bit, and it seems like, and those changes did not necessarily make players happy, but those two changes combined don't even match up to the market change. So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what's CCP trying to do? What's their end goal here? Because if you're talking about ways to reduce ways to close the faucet sink gap without making people mad, higher market taxes is one of the more efficient ones, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those taxes that is considered fair because it really targets everyone equally. Some people more in quantity if they're trading more, but it's the sales tax, I think, is it is quite good. And um, in terms of inconsistency, of course, you know one thing is that you have to look at CCP as um, it's a company like any other company, and you're going to have different opinions on what to do, and sometimes they want to try things, which is completely all right. And then on top of that, you have fluctuation in employees and different opinions coming in. And so overall, um, we know, I've talked about this on stream before in the past. Some of the economic minds that we had on the show as well, like CCP Psych, for example, are not with the company anymore. And clearly, you're going to have new ideas. You're going to have to, or you're going to have new philosophies about what makes a market tick. And so hopefully they can figure it out quickly. They can try these things and hopefully, make some tweaks. I just wish they would do these tweaks quicker. It always takes so long. It takes so long. Yeah, anything else that we missed? Let's see. Okay, of course. We have to talk about the MPI. Angry, and we touched this earlier. The ones, if we're looking at what's trading the most over yearly average, the highest one is Pyrite, trading about 129% over yearly average, followed by Mexilon with 77% over 52-week average, and then Morphite about 66%.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, what's like I always feel like if we do a market show on the MER, or an analysis show on the MER, I have to mention, if you look at Reddit, you always think that the sky is falling because people look at this graph and say, oh, okay, look, ships are 200% more expensive, and that's just not true.
Well,
right?
no, it's not true.
Like basic minerals, they do impact capital, super capital Titan prices, absolutely. They impact tier 1 battleships massively, right? And they just overall tier 1 completely consist of minerals. And then you have some faction ships are as well. But if you look at T2 overall, Moongoo is cheaper than it was before, and so that is why you're not seeing a huge movement in tier 2 modules until maybe now because of the Morphite. But this is not a sky is falling situation. This is mostly an availability situation and an annoying situation. But it's not like, oh, ships are double in price, right?
Yeah, that's I would say that's an accurate take on things. However, um, what was that? What was I thinking? I lost my train of thought.
I mean, what's your
I'll think of it.
take from a null perspective, right? Like, when you hear various people in the community saying, okay, mineral prices are completely out of hand, like I saw dark shines raging on on Reddit. What's what's your take? How are the high mineral prices impacting the large alliances?
I would say like not really, because the thing about it, sure, ships are expensive. You can't like not fly just because ships cost a lot. It is annoying that CCP sort of chose to put the money not where we live, but
Mm-hmm.
it they choose what they want to do, and there's only so much. It's their game. They control everything, and if CCP thinks that certain types of minerals should be expensive, then there's really nothing the player base can do besides try to convince CCP that it should.
It's like, if that was so, if CCP said, we need pyrite to be expensive, and that was the reason, then I would completely agree with you. Uh, Based on what CCP has done in the past, and based on the levers that were hit, um, I think it's clear that sometimes, and this is totally understandable for a big sandbox, that sometimes you just hit a lever and something unexpected happens, and it takes a long time to balance things out. And I do think right now we're in a situation where things are out of whack. Things need to be fixed, absolutely. But I
But
would agree with you that it's more of an inconvenience than it is like a sky is falling situation.
well, the thing is, like, it's not like the CCP doesn't know what this is going to do, because we the effect of this change um should have been clear since pre-equinox, which is what we were telling them this, like, even before the first equinox patch hit, about pretty much what is happening now, and the fact that they haven't really changed anything sort of makes me think that, like, this is the intended outcome.
Yeah. Now I have to think about the NDA. Yeah. So I think the last communication we saw from CCP is the directors round that they did, right? And that was more of a we're closely monitoring the situation and we'll adjust as necessary, right? So it wasn't a oh, we know exactly what's wrong and this needs to change, but
All right, but the thing is,
that's to
like,
be expected,
when you
right? That's
think
what they
about
always do.
when you think about the I'm trying to recall the last patch where they actually changed things
Hmm.
having to do with minerals, and it was November. I think it was like right after Equinox Force conversion, so that it was like November 10th. So that was 3 months ago. So I don't know how long they need to gather data, but I think it's probably not 3 months.
Yeah, because they're probably looking at the MER and saying, I mean, as they write it here, right? I mean, I do feel like this right here, the first bullet in the economic summary is basically like a direct response to the community, because the community says, look, mining is broken, nobody's mining, it's no fun to mine, and CCP comes out and says everyone's mining, right? I think that's how I would read this from the community perspective. And so I think uh, I would want CCP to be like over here on the spectrum to say, okay, no, this is urgent. Like we need to fix something for two reasons. One, there's a shortage in minerals clearly, but two, also it's so like it's so easy to make the community happy. I think sometimes CCP thinks it's very, very, very complicated to make this community happy, and sometimes I just think, look, it's really not, because if you look at pre-scarcity, okay, we were over here, you know, like capitals are ammo. We were we were here, or titans are ammo. We were over here, and we're now over here, and CCP just thinks we're here, and we're not. Like we're like squarely over here, and for them uh to just make the rocks just significantly larger, inject more minerals into the system, it just wouldn't. Right now there's just no way it would bring us on the slide even back to here, right? Like they're just being so incredibly careful, and that's the frustrating thing. So I don't think
I don't
that.
know if careful is the right word. More like, I would probably burn too many bridges if I said what I actually wanted to say.
This, do you want to run again for CSM is the question, Angry.
No, no.
um yeah, so but clearly like there's no I think the sense of urgency is different in the community than it is with CCP, and let's hope we can get them to make some changes soon-ish. Because here's something that I can say on the CSM. We are, is like, from the things that we have told CCP on the summit, we are pretty much aligned. Everyone, like every single person on the CSM, agrees with some of the points that we just discussed in terms of mineral availability and in terms of size of rocks. There's not a single person on there that says, no, that's a terrible idea, and look at the consequences that could happen. And so I think that should make CCP think. Angry,
Hopefully,
anything else?
because we've also had cases before where everyone agreed, and then CCP also seemed like they agreed, and then nothing happened.
We did, yes. Or not yet, Angry. It'll take a few years. Yeah, wormholes are in check. I mean, Angry, I remember some times where you and I had this show, and C5 and C6 wormholes were generating north of 20 trillion. Those two are now
That's not the case anymore.
no.
Although a lot. it did cause a lot of wormholes to be very angry. However, it the interesting part is that it's been almost a year since that change, and wormholes haven't really seen an activity drop. If you want to define, um, if you're looking at their if you're looking at their kill activity, the amount of people, if the amount of the definition I'm using is the unique victims in wormholes hasn't dropped, and neither has the total amount of stuff that dies in wormholes, despite the fact that their risk faucet has dropped by 25%. So, so I guess kudos to the wormholers. They didn't, or you might think of the other way. They were so rich that losing 25% of their income didn't really affect their propensity to throw stuff at each other.
You know, I liken wormholers a little bit to nullsec miners, and hear me out, right? Because I always like nullsec mining, or even like mining overall in EVE Online. A lot of times it's it's terrible ISK efficiency, but people do it anyway because they love it, right? So they just want that type of gameplay, which I totally respect, right? If you're looking at wormholers, I think a lot of them, they're going to be wormholers, and they're going to stay wormholers, and they're going to play in wormholes. And it's not like every single wormholer was making trillions of ISK, right? That was a smallish elite group, and it probably still is. If you listen to Varrock and chat here, the rich are still rich. It's probably still a very elite group controlling the ISK faucets there, which um, which it's not great, but it's not going to make 80% of the wormholers act differently, right? Because they're wormholers, and they're going to continue wormholing, just like miners are going to continue to mine, even though ISK efficiency might be utter crap compared to even ratting, right? There are folks who enjoy mining. Yep, there are, says chat. Finding a
Think
gas site
about
and
that.
mining. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems that C5 actually. Well, looking at the data, the C5 took the large brunt of the hit, and C6 barely changed since the
Mm-hmm.
nerf. Because before the nerf, we had C6 doing 5.5 trillions. Now they're at last month they're at 4, so it is a reduction. But the big reduction is in the C5, which went from 15 to 8. So that's almost 50, down about 40%. And I think that would probably be due to day trippers not going to wormholes as much
Mm.
compared to before. Whereas the long term C5 residents that are still doing their thing.
It does seem to me like the more recent. So if you compare the last 2 years to the previous five or something, the IS generation shifted a lot from nullsec towards uh, wormholes and Pochven, right? Especially, it does seem to me like those latter two are much more a smaller group, and I know you've argued that a lot. So I probably don't have to convince you on this, Angry, but um, it does feel like we are due a democratization. I don't want to call it socialism for our American friends, but we want a little bit better wealth distribution in terms of ISK, because I feel like C5, C6 wormholes, Pochven multiboxing, it's always the same names, the same groups I hear about, and it's just not a lot of people that are generating insane amounts of ISK, and that can't be healthy for the economy. Or have I got that wrong, Angry?
I would say Parchment. It's probably a lot more true for Parchment than wormholes because wormholes tend to stick to their own business a lot more than people who live in Parchment. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you look at like the groups involved in Parchment before nerf. A lot of them are not people who operate exclusively in Parchment, whereas six people pretty much exclusively operate in high class wormholes. So like in Parchment, you had groups like Big AB, you had Sticks from all the blocks, you had other groups that use Parchment as a farm, but not and then do their stuff elsewhere with their Parchment ISK, which is
Right.
not as common with wormholes, at least at a systemic level.
Yeah. So it's more a question of that elite group is going to go wherever they need to go, with maybe a smaller exception for wormholes because it's controlled in a different way. Um, cool. Anything else on the MER? Angry?
Now, now I think I've had stuff to say.
Cool. Overall, how are you feeling about Eve right now? I know you've been off the CSM for what 6 months now. Is it
3 months now.
3 months? Is it different playing the game again as non CSM, or how are you feeling about the game?
Yeah, it's pretty not stressful. It's great.
Yeah, I know you're someone that put a lot of work into their into the CSM with a lot of analysis. I think Drake Iden is giving you a run for your money in terms of bringing graphs to CSM meetings. But cool. All right, then. Thanks, dude. I'll hopefully
Thank you
see
for
you
having
next
me
month.
on.
I'll let you know when we go back to this. Hopefully, it doesn't take this long. I like when we get the MER like on day 1 or day 2, day 7 or 8. Really doesn't feel great because the numbers are feeling a bit stale. Cool. Have a good day, Angry. See you later.